Where things stand when it comes to the federal government shutdown on day 20. The Senate back in session today and set to vote on a funding bill to end the shutdown this afternoon. However, there is no indication that measure will pass. This is now the third longest shutdown in modern history. The House remains out of session. Speaker Mike Johnson again designating this week a district work period. The House was last in session a month ago, almost exactly September 19th. And you know, many Americans are losing confidence in their financial future, even as unemployment stays low. That's the underlying message from a new Associated Press poll that came out over the weekend. The poll found nearly half of Americans, 47%, say they are not confident they could find a good job today. That's up sharply from 37% just a year ago. Close to 70% of adults describe the economy as poor, despite strong employment numbers and steady markets. And a majority of people say grocery prices are their major financial strain on their households. Let's go do the numbers this morning, as we do every Monday, with Metro Atlanta financial expert Andrew Poulos. Andrew, great to see you again. Thanks for coming on.
Good morning, Dan.
You know, Americans feeling pretty pessimistic, clearly, by that poll, even though the economy doing well by most measures. And it kind of makes you wonder, are people's day-to-day experiences just different from those numbers we see?
I think so. It seems that there's some sort of disconnect between the numbers and the polls that we're seeing versus how Americans are feeling right now. It just seems that more and more people are feeling like they're living, day to day, paycheck to paycheck, week to week, so to speak, right? Which is a huge concern. We're starting to see more complaint about just groceries prices remaining elevated. Fuel prices, energy prices are just taking out a lot out of their paychecks. So there is that disconnect. I mean, there's jobs out there, but you hear people complaining that they really don't feel that they can find a good job, or if they're looking for a job, it may be trying to find a second job just to make ends meet, which is all very concerning.
I'm reading a great book right now, 1929 by Andrew Sorkin, that just came out last week, and it talks about that disconnect and how sometimes that noise on Main Street can be louder and happen faster than you see those numbers on Wall Street. When it comes to now, 2025, how much of this anxiety comes from the news headlines and political rhetoric, and how much comes from what families are actually feeling in their wallets every month? I mean, talk about grocery prices, for example.
Yeah, I mean, look, the headlines obviously bring anxiety and concern to households, but I think at the end of the day, it's what is at home. When you take your paycheck home and you spend it and you have nothing left, or you're trying to make ends meet until the next paycheck, that's what Americans are concerned about. And I think, rightfully to some extent, probably you got a good majority of Americans who felt optimistic going into this second administration of President Trump, based on how the first one was, where the economy was booming, people were optimistic, people felt better. This one just hasn't quite worked like that just yet, right? There's just other factors going on. We have the shutdown right now, and I'm sure people are feeling anxiety and pessimism right now about the economy being shut down, the government being shut down, I should say. How much longer will that last? And we're also coming up 2 weeks from now, if that, we're coming up into open enrollment healthcare. That is a major point of contention for most Americans. Healthcare is just super unaffordable, and people are complaining about it. Something has to change.
Andrew, when you look at these numbers, job worries, higher bills, lower confidence, what's your message to families here in Metro Atlanta trying to stay optimistic about their finances?
Yeah, look, I would say you got to stay optimistic. Being pessimistic and being negative doesn't really solve anything. It just brings more anxiety and more stress to your household. You got to sit down and try to figure out where you can do some cost cutting, even if it's temporary, right? Look at your budget, look at the bills, and see what is disposable. What can you do without, so to speak, right? And so trying to figure out how to make ends meet. And sometimes it's a combination of cutting expenses and increasing your income, which means finding a second job or finding a better job. And as we see, Americans are complaining that those are two hard things to come by right now, and at least that's how they feel.
A final question for you this morning. Do you think this erosion in confidence could start affecting the economy itself, like a self-fulfilling prophecy?
Yeah, possibly. Look, I mean, if we go into 2026 and something doesn't change, and that something could be many different things. It could be that the economy starts to pick up. Maybe gas prices at the pump start coming down to where it gives a little optimism that things are changing. Maybe we'll get some interest rate cuts where car loans and mortgage loans and things and credit cards, basically, and other things that are attached to rates start to become less expensive, which leaves more money in people's pocketbook. So if something changes, I think the optimism of the American consumer could quickly change, which could impact all of us positively. But until that happens, I think we're going to continue to see the American people basically complaining and being stressed out about the current economic situation.
Andrew Poulos on this Money Monday. We thank you for joining us.